Welcome to our history tape number 191. We're very excited today to bring you a very special mini-series saluting women in history in concert with the Seroptimus Club of Grand Prairie, Texas. And we are most honored today to have a very special lady that has been very meaningful to the history of Grand Prairie, Texas. And we're just so pleased to have her on the set today to help us do this salute, Gail Gustafson.
Thank you, Ruthie. It's nice to be here.
We're just excited about having you with us today, Miss Gail. Now, to establish your genealogy and to set the stage for our mini history, if you'd look into your camera and tell us about your history, a little bit about your parents, your grandparents, brothers and sisters, anything you'd like to do to document the real Gail.
All right, Ruthie, thank you. The Gustafsons came to America from Sweden in the late 1800s and made their home in Connecticut. And then my father and mother met in New England, and when my father finished his education, they came to the Dallas area because he was employed with Chance Vaught, the forerunner of LTV. And we made our home in Grand Prairie since 1952. I was just an infant then, of course.
Yes.
And I had 3 brothers and a sister come after me, and 4 of us went to school here in Grand Prairie.
Would you like to name drop those, please?
Sure. My brothers are Lars, John, and George, and my sister Julie, and we attended Bowie Elementary, which was our neighborhood school.
Would you name your parents also so we can get their correct names in this documentary?
Yes. My mother's full name is Julia Olds Lamb Gustafson, and my father is Kendall Arthur Gustafson.
Wonderful. And as LTV, what was his trade?
He was an aeronautical engineer, and then of course the aeronautical industry became astronautical, and he was an astronautical engineer.
Yes, and that was real fun. And growing up in Grand Prairie, Texas, and going to Bowie School, would you like to bring to remembrance, say, some of your special teachers, your principal, anything you'd like to document that early life here in Grand Prairie?
Yeah, I had wonderful teachers there. I think they're all fairly much institutions in Grand Prairie. Morris Wages was my principal. Claudia Ruth Younger was my first grade teacher, and I think my memories of Grand Prairie are very deeply embedded in my memory, because when we moved when I was 10, I had all of my Grand Prairie history was before 10, and I just remember it so clearly. I had Reba Eisenhower for 2nd grade, and Mrs. Elliott, I don't think I know her first name, and Mary Dillion was my 4th grade teacher. And all those children that I knew back then, a lot of them still live here, and I have maintained a lot of those friendships.
And as far as all of your teachers that you've mentioned, was there a favorite, a mentor, someone in those early years that gave you a real special encouragement?
Well, I remember something special about each one. But Mrs. Younger, my 1st grade teacher, I think she really, she probably took a special interest in all of her students, but I felt that she took an interest in me, and I just have many happy memories of school with her.
And leaving Grand Prairie, Texas after the 4th grade, where did Gail wander to?
My family moved to Arlington, and then I went to school there, public school, and graduated from Arlington High. Then I went to UT Arlington for a while, transferred to the University of Texas in Austin, and then came back to complete my degree in foreign languages at UT Arlington. And I married and started my family. I married Arden Plattner, and we have 3 children. And when they were young, I kept going back to college. I also went to El Centro and studied interior design after I had my children in preschool. But my 3 children, Celia Ann Plattner is a student at Texas A&M. She's down there on 2 scholarships.
Okay.
Has worked hard to earn those. My son Aaron Plattner he's a sophomore at Grand Prairie High School. And my youngest child, Kendall Dion Plattner, my little girl, is a student at Immaculate Conception School in the 4th grade.
Now, what year did you come back to the Grand Prairie area? When you were in Arlington, we realized all of that they really did proselyte you over into the Arlington area, but back into Grand Prairie.
Well, I came back to Grand Prairie in 1973. Celia was an infant, and we started our home here. and raised our children here. We lived on the Plattner Ranch for a while, which is still fairly centrally located in Grand Prairie amidst all the other progress around it. And we later moved into an historical home and spent many years lovingly restoring it. And during that time, I became involved in the historical organization and the historical commission. And from my interest in the history of my home and my neighborhood, grew an interest in all of Grand Prairie's history and Texas. I mean, there isn't really any stopping point.
Would you like to name drop the grandparents on the Plattner side so that we can tie that in, since there were at least 4 Plattner young men in the town at one time?
That's right. Arden's father, Dr. Albert Plattner, and his 3 brothers were physicians here. And Arden's mother is Mrs. Rosalie Worsham. And my parents, I mentioned, I think, Julia and Kendall.
Yes. Now, we're into Grand Prairie, Texas, into history. You've gone to University of Texas at Arlington, University of Texas, period, then back to UT Arlington, and then to El Centro, and interior design. After all of this other formal education, what turned you in that direction, Gail?
Well, as my children were becoming more independent, I decided it was time to find a career for myself, and I looked at what my interests were, and it had always been in interior design. And so I went back to school with 2 of my children in school and studied, and then when I was through studying interior design, we added Kendall to our family. So for many years, I worked at home with my design business and raised her, and the 2 mixed very well. And then in the last few years, I've expanded my business to become a full-time occupation, full-time career for me.
Do you think that in the restoration of your home, your beautiful home over on Moore Street, did that stimulate your interest in interior design by any chance?
I'm sure it had something to do with it. I always had a leaning toward art, and I look at interior design as one of the applied arts, and I feel that it's a creative outlet for me, as well as something I can do to help people have beautiful and workable environments to live and work in.
In working on the Historical Commission and as the president of the historical organization, what was the most exciting thing that happened during your tenures there?
Well, I always found it exciting to see historical markers awarded to our town after much hard work and research that was done by many people. Sometimes I was able to help somewhat with that, but it was always exciting to me to see something recognized so that it could be preserved. And I had an interest in seeing a lot of older buildings reused and not destroyed, and those markers helped, I think, in that direction.
In your business today, do you find yourself interfacing with others in Grand Prairie that maybe you've gone to school with? Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, I always try to keep my business in Grand Prairie, and I tend to be sort of like like a contractor. I employ many other people sometimes to help me in my projects, my design projects, and that way I can provide some work for other Grand Prairie people. But there are very many artists and craftsmen in this area that I've sought out. And of course, I don't always want to give away my secrets, but I just will mention Veronica Hopkins. She's here today, and she and I do work together. She helps me with my lighting in my design projects.
What is the most exciting project of your career so far as an interior designer?
Well, I always enjoy working with people on their homes. I like to help them, make them very personal, and not to look like a decorator came in and did the work. And so I always ask them for their memorabilia. And it's very exciting to me to take something unusual and make a lamp out of it, or display it in some way, shadow box it and hang it on the wall. And I've used some very unusual items that people have saved from their family to use in their decorating, and I like that. But I've done some larger projects recently, contract work with the government, and that's a big step for me. And I'm doing some general contracting on remodeling of homes. So in my job, it's something different every day, and I like that.
And we have the history of Gail. We have the things that you're doing today. What does the future hold for your career in interior design, or other aspirations are there?
Well, I'm always open to new directions that my career might go, but I really have a dream to buy and renovate and resell older homes that are in Grand Prairie. I could probably go to other neighborhoods or other towns, but I'm most interested in my particular neighborhood, which has a historical designation, the Moore North Street neighborhood. And I would like to possibly do one house at a time until I've accomplished a whole block. But that's one of my aspirations for the future.
Of all of the old homes that are still remaining in Grand Prairie, the few that we didn't tear down with urban renewal and etc., what do you find the most interesting of all?
Of the houses here?
Mm-hmm. Other than your very own that you love and adore.
Well, I've always admired the Payne, let's see, I've forgotten the name of it.
Dr. Payne?
The home on Center Street that was renovated a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me with the name of it?
South Center, the one that...
Tommy. That one.
That one, Tommy's house.
Right, the one that you can see from the center of town. Yes, when you look south. That's one of my favorite older homes. Mm-hmm. But I like all of them, even the ones that maybe don't have a great deal of architectural interest. I think they're all historically significant to Grand Prairie.
All right, before we leave the set, I really would like for you to look out into your camera and encourage young people that may watch our show about how interesting it is to have a career set, go to college for 4 years and maybe 2 more, and then change and then come up with something you dearly love, and to encourage them to keep pursuing something that they will really, really enjoy.
Well, I can do that, Ruthie, because I have 2 children that are teenagers, and I might say something to them like this, that they should always try to be themselves, and they'll be happiest in their work if they find something that is in line with their interests and their talents, and they should really look at themselves. And I would really encourage people to develop a skill or a trade, because in uncertain times it's really wonderful to be self-employed and to know that it's up to you to create your own income, and not to go to work someday and find out you don't have a job anymore. Mm-hmm. But I would encourage young people to try different careers, to seek an education and study lots of different things and come up with what suits you best.
And of all of your 3 children, just magnificent young people, tell us which is the most unique of all and why.
Oh, well, they're all very unique.
I was hoping you would say that.
They are. They're all very unique. I think my girls are very strong-willed and independent. I think those are good qualities for women to have in this day and time. My son is very artistically creative, and actually Kendall, my youngest daughter, is also. They're all very bright. They don't always show it in their grades, but I know that they are. And Aaron, he has a wonderful sense of humor. He just keeps me laughing all the time. And right now, he and Kendall are the only 2 at home as Celia's away at school, and he really does keep me in stitches most of the time.
And into the far future, how would you like to retire and be remembered?
Oh, that's a good question.
We have a half minute for you to do it.
A half minute for me to think of this. I think I would probably like to live near the ocean in a warm climate as I get older, and I would like to be remembered by my children as having been a loving mother.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gail. It's been so wonderful.
Thank you, Ruthie. I've enjoyed it very much.
To have you as the first part of our number 191 interview. We're looking forward to seeing more great things that you'll do for Grand Prairie, Texas.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.
Amigos, este sábado es la gran limpieza de Texas. Palomilla, don't mess with Texas. En Texas no queremos basura. Y'all hear?
As we continue our history tape number 191, as we salute Women in History Month for the month of March, we're very delighted to bring to you a young lady that is an entrepreneur, believe me. Veronica Hopkins, welcome to the set.
Thank you, Ruthie. It's nice to be here.
Great. Veronica, a longtime Grand Prairian, a businesswoman, an exciting young lady that's a mover and shaker in many clubs and organizations. I'd like for you to look out into your camera and let's get onto this genealogy bit and establish yourself. Give us a little history about your parents, your grandparents, and then as you're giving that, I'd like for you to show and tell, because I believe you brought some pictures of those famous parents of yours. Would you do that?
Yes, I did. To start with my parents, Indy and Katie Hopkins are my parents. She is Catherine Irene Stroud Hopkins, and he is Indy Hopkins. They're originally from Missouri, and my grandparents on my father's side, Noah and Sarah Hopkins, still live in Missouri. They're retired farmers. On my mother's side are E.R. and Grace Stroud. They are deceased, but they lived in Grand Prairie the last few years of their life. And I have several aunts and uncles on both sides of the family. I have 3 brothers and 1 sister that all live in the area.
And you would name drop.
Yes, I certainly will. My next oldest brother is Ronnie Hopkins. He lives in Waxahachie, but still works in Grand Prairie with my dad. My brother Gary and his family live in Mesquite. He's a truck driver over there. My brother Tex lives in Arlington and is an Arlington police officer. And my sister Kathy lives in Grand Prairie and is married, and her last name is Ellis now. And they have, between them, I have 14 nieces and nephews.
How wonderful for Christmas.
Yes.
Oh, that is
How expensive for
yes,
Christmas.
How expensive for Christmas. That is true. That is a wonderful genealogy. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your parents? You're growing up in Grand Prairie. What does your dad do for a living? What does your mom do for a living? And how did that sort of set the stage, them being so busy, that Veronica would finally become an entrepreneur and have her own business in Grand Prairie, Texas?
Well, to start out, my dad was in the Navy, and we were transferred to the Dallas Naval Air Station. And in one of the more unusual moves of the government, they never transferred him again. So he is retired Navy here in Grand Prairie, and he became a builder and realtor. And in the last few years, my mom has gone to work for Southland Funeral Home over on Southwest 3rd Street. And Dad is still a builder and realtor in Grand Prairie, and my brother works with him, my brother Ronnie, and my sister has worked for him, and they're currently negotiating for her to go back to work with him as a decorator and designer for the houses he builds. And so that would kind of set the stage for me. When I graduated from college, I went to work for Polaroid Corporation for 12 years. But then I started looking around and became disenchanted with corporate life and started looking around in the area for something to do, and decided that it would be a good time to open my own business.
All right. How old were you when you came to Grand Prairie, Texas?
5.
You were 5 years old. Name some schools. I
went through the entire Grand Prairie school system.
Okay.
I went to Fannin Elementary School. I started my junior high career at Jefferson, and then we moved over to where we live now, and I went to Adams Middle School, and then I graduated in 1971 from Grand Prairie High School.
All right, 1971, you just happened to have...
I just happened to have my yearbook.
1971, Gopher Jeep, isn't that great? Well, let's go back to Fannin. And are there favorite teachers? Anything exciting happened to you while you attended Fannin? And they are the Eagles, you know?
Yes. When I was in elementary school, when we were in elementary school, my mother was very active in the PTA. And so I always had very good teachers back then. 2 memorable ones, or 3 actually, is Mrs. Flippo was my 2nd grade teacher. Yes. I had Myron Geither for my 5th grade teacher, and I remember that especially because I was in the 5th grade when Kennedy was assassinated.
Yes.
And he pulled a radio out of the closet that he held together with Scotch tape and baling wire, and we listened to the accounts the rest of the day instead of doing our normal schoolwork. Then in the 6th grade, I had Goldie Wolverton Bratney, yes, which is still a very dear friend of mine. And then, you know, in junior high, you have so many that there's really not a teacher that stands out in my junior high career except for Owita Dougherty Smith.
Yes.
And she was my history teacher at Jefferson. And then when we moved over, we are still friends today. You know, Carlisle, her husband, was state rep for a long time.
Yes.
And so we're still real good friends. And then when I got to high school, probably my favorite teachers in high school were my English teachers, especially Miss O'Kelly in my junior year and Miss Roy in my senior year.
And Roy was tough.
Yes, she was. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because when I went to register, they always staggered our registration times. And when I went to register for my senior year, I requested Miss Roy for my English teacher because I knew her reputation. And the teacher that was sitting at the table said, well, the other classes aren't full yet. And I said, but I want Miss Roy. And they said, well, you don't have to take Miss Roy. Most of the time, the people that have Miss Roy only are the last ones to register. And there were several of us that requested her, and what they did was they put us all in the same class. So I had an excellent English class my senior year.
Oh, that is
and it helped me because I placed out a freshman English in college.
wonderful. And the principal at Grand Prairie High School while you were there or when you graduated?
Was Hobbs Williams,
Hobbs
who later
Williams.
went on to be superintendent of schools.
Yes, that's great. All right, following your graduation from Grand Prairie, then let's take the next step. You mentioned college, but let's tell us why and where.
Well, I went to Dallas Baptist University my first year, and then I transferred to the University of Mary Hardin Baylor in Belton and graduated from there in 1975 with a Bachelor of Science degree.
Okay, and a Bachelor of Science. What did you plan to do with your life then?
Well,
Going into that corporate world that you mentioned.
When I was in college, I planned to teach vocational home economics.
Okay.
And when I did my student teaching, I realized that possibly I had made the wrong career decision.
I see.
So when I got out of college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do because I still wanted to use my degree, but it was at a time when home economists were becoming less and less prevalent in the landscape of America. When I was younger, home economists were everywhere. The gas company had one, the electric company had one. All the county extension agents were home economists, and this was a profession that people didn't go into anymore because people in the profession tended to stay there.
Yes.
And so I just kind of looked around, and I knew some people that worked for Polaroid and interviewed for a part-time job over there, which worked into a full-time job, which worked into a 12-year career.
Yes. And when you left Polaroid, what were you doing at the time of your leaving Polaroid? What were your assignments there?
I was working in the Irving Distribution Center. We had a 9-state territory that we covered. We worked with the dealers and, helped them with their orders and marketing and shipping orders and things like that.
Oh, that's great. And then, leaving Polaroid, what happened to Veronica then?
That's when I opened V's House of Lights in 1987.
And where are you located?
Right now I'm located at 115 West Main. That's not my original location. I have always been on Main Street. I decided that I wanted to open a business in Grand Prairie because I had lived here almost all my life. And I knew a lot of people in Grand Prairie, and I knew the town, and I felt like that this would be a good place to have a business, aside from the fact that we are centrally located in the Metroplex. And after I started investigating business opportunities, I decided a lighting store to deal with individuals and the building industry would be a good thing. So I decided that Main Street would be a good location because it's easily accessible not only to Grand Prairie but also to Irving and Arlington and other cities in the Metroplex.
Okay. Now, we're down to the nitty-gritty. You're in business, but you have more spin-offs, the women's division, AMBUCS, almost anything that we go into. Tell us about your organizations that you're a member of and the community service that you do.
Currently, I am on the board of directors of the Grand Prairie Chamber of Commerce. I'm a member of the Women's Division Chamber of Commerce, a charter member of Business Against Crime and past president there. I am a charter member of the Grand Prairie Merchants Association, and I'm on the Downtown Improvement Committee.
Yes.
I'd like to talk about that again in just a moment, but I am also the Pledge Center coordinator for the Grand Prairie Pledge Center for the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon that's held each Labor Day. And that's all I can think of right now.
That is.
And I'm also active in First Baptist Church Grand Prairie.
I was going to ask you that next.
Yes.
Okay. What does the future hold for Veronica?
I'd like to say I have everything all mapped out. Of course, I definitely plan on expanding my business. I'm working actively on that right now. I don't really see myself in retirement as such. When I get older, I see myself pretty much maybe slowing down a little bit, but not ever stopping work. That's not the history that I've seen coming from an agricultural background like I do. We always, you just slow down, but you don't ever really stop working. I think that would get kind of boring to stop working entirely. But mainly I just plan to keep doing what I'm doing and wait for the Lord's guidance on a lot of things.
It's been delightful having you with us, Veronica. I want to thank you for your contributions to Grand Prairie, and we salute you and your family and all of the good things you have done. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
This is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.